All right. As we start, I'll share a funny story. The old wooden brown chair I had, I knew it was getting rickety and everything, but in God's mercy, this Saturday he had Jesus sit on it and break it and not me. So I'm very thankful for that. And thanks. So I need to get another one, so I'm a little shorter today, but that's okay. So, Mandy, can I ask, in the camera, is it on me or from me sitting
You
here?
are dead center.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Sir.
All right, that's cool.
Maybe you can find one at a charity somewhere.
Oh, Lord. We had to think about that for a minute.
Oh, we need more chairs. Get some more chairs. We have two back here. James, if anybody else needs a chair, we can move them there or you can sit somewhere else. Good problem to have. You're going to have some good stuff. You're going to bring some good. Well, that's that. I'm coffee, so I can't go with it. All right, everybody. We are Life of Elijah, session 6. This is such a tough chapter. I invited Pastor Scotty and his giant brain to come and join us.
The master brain.
I found him.
Did you?
In the wrong place. I was like,
Where is everybody? All right. Now, I'm not going to go all the way back to all of our lessons, but if you remember, Elijah thought revival had come. He saw God rain down fire. He saw God show his power. They wiped out the priests of Baal. He thought it was now time for Yahweh to be honored by all the people again. Even the people said, he is God, he is God. And in just a few moments after God blessed them with rain, he runs ahead and he meets Ahab and finds out that his wife Jezebel wants to take his life. And if you've ever desired something so much and you think you have it, and then it falls through your fingers, you get a taste of what Elijah was going through. And you know as well as I do that when that happens, you can't just always just bounce back, right? You can't just, oh, okay, I'll be all right. No, sometimes it gets deep inside of you. And so I wanted to just do kind of a little exercise to start us off. Let's pretend that we as a church made a decision that we were going to create this massively wonderful event for our neighbor, our entire neighborhood all around us, and we were going to schedule it for the second week of December, okay? And it was going to be in December, and some of you became part of our media team, some of you became the planning team, others of you decided you would be part of the outreach team. We all 95% of the church, all got together and spent months and months and months planning. We fundraised. We got so much money. We created this giant festival here at the church. And we advertised it, and we got to December. And the whole main emphasis of it was to have people come, get to know us, hopefully so they can come to know our Jesus by joining us on Christmas Eve, all right? It's a 6-month push for this. And we do it, and we have the event, not just hundreds, but 1,000 people are showing up on and off throughout the day. We are stunned and amazed by the outreach and the output. We get so many numbers and addresses. And then afterwards, we have people sending out calls, inviting people again to come join us on Christmas Eve. And we feel like we did absolutely everything right. And everyone's talking about how, you know what? I talked to this person. They said they're coming. I talked to this person. They said, I'm definitely coming. And we followed up and we feel like, oh, we better put up extra chairs. We better pack out the sanctuary and make lots of room. And we show up, and it's Christmas Eve, and maybe 3 people from that entire event show up. And that's it. And there's somebody's brother and sister. Right? What are you feeling inside at that moment when you show up to church that night and you see there appears at least to be no impact whatsoever?
Defeated.
Absolutely defeated.
Disappointed.
Self-pity.
Self-pity, absolutely.
Disappointed.
Absolutely disappointed, right? All the D's. Disappointed, disgusted, throw out all the D's. What if I then said in January, we're going to try it again? How much motivation are you going to have to push to have it happen again?
Little or none.
Little or none, right? And you're going to be like, all right, we tried this. It is not going to work. Gives you a taste for where Elijah was at this moment. I mean, he saw truly the miraculous beyond anything any of us have ever seen. He saw God. He heard God. He followed God. He saw answered prayers beyond what he could think. And yet it appeared that revival was not coming because Ahab and Jezebel wanted to wipe him out meaning that the entire government that he thought would be transformed now wouldn't be. And he takes off into the wilderness, and we read about how God took care of him. He got down in front of a broom tree, and it swept him away. Get it? That's a joke. Anyway, and an angel ministered to him. But then it says he went into a cave and he spent the night. And that's where we are for this evening. And so in 1 Kings 19, the second half of verse 9, I don't think that was God's voice, but that's okay. That's all right. I was going to say God said. It would have been perfect timing then if you missed it. So anyway, but it says, and the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? Now, 1 Kings 19, second half of 9. So, yeah, okay. Now, what are you doing here, Elijah? Does anybody remember, did God tell Elijah to go? Now, just a quick reminder, Mount Horeb is another name for Mount Carmel. So, he was called that one. So, it's the same place Moses went when God called him up on the mountain. We don't know it's necessarily the same cave, but we know it's the same region of mountains. Yeah.
Is that near Golgotha?
Larry?
I don't think so.
I believe it's not. So,
Is that turned the right way?
yes, I flipped the screen, so it's good. We're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep. So, thanks for asking. And so, was Elijah sent to Mount Horeb by God? No. Nowhere in the Bible does it say he was sent by God to Mount Horeb. Did God tell Elijah that he was done using him as his prophet, even though Elijah said, I'm done?
No.
Nope. Did God promise to send rain? Yes. And did he send rain?
Yes.
Yes. But did God promise Elijah that after he sent the rain, the king and the queen would become worshipers of Yahweh?
No.
This is what we do many times. And I don't blame us for it. It's just our human nature. God tells us or gives us a little piece of something. Then we figure out all the steps he's going to take. Then he gives us the piece, but doesn't follow the following steps. We then think that he failed us. When he never told us that he was going to do that. He never told Elijah once that Ahab and Jezebel's hearts were going to turn back to God. And so here we have Elijah broken, thinking he is an utter failure. So if you have ever felt like a failure, you're in company with Elijah and David and Abraham
And Peter.
I was going to say all the apostles, really.
Yeah.
And so, you're in good company. And so I bet each one of us, if we went around the table, have stories of things we believed God for, and he did not answer or follow through the way we expected him and wanted him to. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Sometimes they're smaller things. Sometimes they are huge things. I know a little of you know my story, but before we came here, we were in a church in Virginia. But before that, we felt God was calling us to the Ramp Ministry in Alabama. So we picked up, we put our house on the market. We went down to the Ramp Ministry and served them for about a year. My thought was, if we go serve them, then I'm going to finally get the preaching platform I want, because their ministry reaches hundreds of thousands of people across the NFL. All I need to do is them to hear me preach once. Bam! I got my massive worldwide ministry that God's called me to and wants me to go. The entire time I was there, I could not have been more ignored by everybody there.
Wow.
My wife had 10 times more favor, as she should, but 10 times more favor serving and doing all this stuff. And I went into a spiritual depression that took me years to get out of. Now, not the kind of spiritual depression where I said I'm not a Christian, but the kind that said I can't believe God for anything anymore. I thought he told us to go here. We got wisdom, we got counsel, we did everything you're supposed to do, and it ended up being the biggest flop in the world. And I went there. Yeah, Larry.
Matt, I met a friend that I used to work with, an acquaintance I used to work with, and talking with her, and I knew her to be an incredibly mousy woman. Just never raised her voice, never got excited, calm, boring. And I said, what's going on? Just catching up. And she said, oh, God has given me a ministry to atheists. And I'm thinking, you? Using discretion, I kept my mouth shut. And I said, how does that work? And she said, well, I talk with them and I ask them when they first got disappointed with God. they tell me. Atheism's not logical. If somebody's an atheist, they're mad at God.
Right. Right.
Yep.
That's right.
And agnostics are, they just color it up by saying there's something out there. And so that's
Maybe there's something, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to Alabama, and the most excited I got was when I got to park cars at their big events. That was my big ministry for the most part. Yeah.
But that was your plan, right?
Yeah,
You were the
that was my
one
plan.
that
Yeah, I
went
brought a bunch
there
of
with that
flashlights with me
plan.
down to Alabama to
If
wave
you
them
don't
on.
believe God has a sense of humor, you tell him what your plans are.
Right, exactly. And so it took me a long time, to get back to the place to believe God for things. Again, it wasn't that I didn't believe in God, but I didn't believe that I could ever hear him for real. And it was a very, very long, and my wife will tell you, she was fed up with me because I have a very analytical mind, and I give her all these arguments why you really can't trust that it's God's voice and stuff. I mean, it was not good. It was really bad. And I'm surprised God allowed me to continue to be a pastor and then made me a priest out of it. But I share all that because we often will think God has failed us when really he never necessarily told us that part of the plan. We just assumed it.
Amen.
And we're going to find out how God works us through when we're in that place in this marvelous, marvelous passage we have here. So we're in 1 Kings 19:10. God said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now, isn't that funny? Omnipotent, all-knowing God says, "So why are you here?" Yeah, and I always wonder what tenor of voice God used there. You know, you ever wonder, like why are you here, Elijah? Or was it, "Why are you here?" You know, it could have been either. But Elijah snaps right back at God. He says, "I've been very zealous for you, Lord Almighty." And that's true, right? No one can say he hasn't. He stood in front of 850 prophets of Baal and Ashtoreth, and he called down fire. He was zealous. He said, "The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me." Can you hear the little cricket with the violin playing during this time, right? But yet every one of us know what that is like. When it just gets so dark, you can't see any of the light in your life at that moment. And that is where he's at. And he is absolutely despondent. If you remember just last week's lesson, he wished death upon himself. I mean, he honestly said, "God, I'm done. I'm ready to die." And we found out in last week's lesson, he wasn't alone in the scriptures of people who did that. That they were felt that forsaken by God. And just as an interesting little note, and you don't have to turn there, but in Exodus chapter 32, we read about how Moses was in the same type of situation. Elijah and Moses both then went to Horeb, or Mount Carmel. Elijah and Moses were both there for 40 days. Elijah and Moses both experienced an overwhelming, powerful force coming out of Yahweh, marked by a massive storm. And then they both will have gotten the opportunity to see the presence of God afterwards. And so we'll see the similarities between the two. And so I'll keep moving on. All right. And so after Elijah poured it in verse, after Elijah, yes.
I don't know where, but in the desert, Jesus was tempted for 4 days and 40 nights.
That's right. Very good. In Matthew 4, Jesus was tempted for 40 days and 40. The only thing is he didn't give in to despair.
Yeah.
He smacked the devil around a bunch.
But
The devil might have despaired. But you're right. There's another 40 days in the desert. Exactly. Yeah. And so after Elijah poured out absolutely everything that was in him to God, revealing his absolute discouragement and desperation, God replied, "Go out and stand on the mountain." But now, before that happens, we have what the Bible calls a theophany. And that's where God reveals himself in somewhat human, tangible form to be seen. But, so now you're Elijah. You've gone into the cave. Yeah, sure, angels gave you some food, but it didn't fix you. Because you're still so far broken and desperate. And it says, so the Lord said, "Go stand on the mountain." Now, if you feel like God has absolutely failed you, are you someone who will then say, "Oh, okay, God"? Anybody? See, we just read that it says, "and he went and stood there." There could have been hours between in that conversation. Terry, then man,
The King James Version says to go stand upon the mount before the Lord.
before the Lord. All right. What were you going to say, man?
If I were there, my attitude, fine! I'll go, but I won't budge.
I don't expect you to do
I'm
anything.
not gonna do anything. Fine!
So,
That's what I would be.
we sometimes read into the characters of this story as if they were not human. You know what I mean? You can't tell me that wasn't his attitude at that point. I mean, he wishes he was dead.
11.
Right.
So go forth and stand
And so,
upon the mount.
go out and stand by the mountain in the presence of the Lord,
Yes.
for the Lord is about to pass by. Now,
Question.
yeah, bro.
Mine says he's to go out tomorrow. Doesn't
Tomorrow?
say, yeah, mine, that's quote unquote. Then he replied, go out tomorrow and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord will pass by. And before the Lord a great, powerful wind.
This time I'm
So-
prepared to look in the Hebrew and find out what it actually says. So give me Einem and
So
New.
there is a time element which is different than what you just said, but
That's if that's
Mine-
the
actually
Lord,
in
the
there.
Lord says wait till tomorrow, then
And
okay,
what verse
must
you
have
have
been
that?
night,
What
he's wait
verse?
till
11.
daylight.
11. It said,
Yeah.
and he said, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong." No, where do you have that? Because there's nothing in the Hebrew.
is yours?
This is the New King James Bible.
Orthodox.
This is an Orthodox
It's,
Bible.
usually
Right.
the
New
text
King
I'm
James.
not ripping it apart. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I don't see a Hebrew word here that means tomorrow.
All
That
right,
would be
well,
the Textus Receptus,
That's true. It would be- Yeah.
and it might be in the Textus Receptus.
What is that?
That is the collection of Old Testament documents from
There's
Yeah.
11.
around the year
Yeah,
2000.
then he replied, "Go out tomorrow."
Oh, okay, I see that, yeah.
Yeah. All I can
And
tell you
what
is
it
the
is
word
is
"go
the whole-
forth" here is yatsa or yatsal, and it's just a primitive word meaning to go out or to break out.
Huh.
And so I don't know enough Hebrew to know where they may have come up with that translation there, and I certainly wouldn't dare tell you that it's wrong.
Larry had an answer.
It has a little
Oh, if
cross.
Larry knows the answer, I'd love to
Well,
hear
no,
it
it's probably just the notes in the Textus Receptus that got incorporated into the text.
into the text. So the New King James would have that,
Right.
whereas
Right.
our other
Textus
translations would
Receptus.
not. So, all right. Well, either way, we can just assume a time period there. Whether it's a day, whether it's an hour, realistically, the time period is not that important.
Can I bring another point up?
Sure.
This passage we're reading here, like, the footnote here says that the Orthodox Church reads this passage on August 6th, the Feast of the Holy Transfiguration.
Okay.
So there is a correlation there, I believe.
That's interesting because we go to the Moses passage in Exodus for
Right.
our Feast of Transfiguration.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A little different.
I didn't lose anybody, did you? I'll bring you back now. Sorry, we got a little Bible geeky on you. Sorry, my bad. So, all right. But to the important point is that the Lord told him to go and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord will pass by. And so, whether he went begrudgingly or one last whisper of hope, Elijah goes out to see what God's going to do. And I allow it again to put us in that situation. Say, God said, go out into your backyard and my presence is going to show up. And then all of a sudden, we get one of those beautiful Florida storms, right? Where everything's blowing. You're wondering if your gates are going to fall down. You see a cat flying across. No dogs are pulling. But no, a cat flying around and everything. And all of a sudden, you're like, Lord, is this you? Is it you? Wouldn't you say that? I would say that. Is that you? But the Lord wasn't in that, was he?
No.
And then all of a sudden an earthquake comes and shakes the foundation. Remember, this guy's on a mountain, you know. So if you're in an earthquake and you're on a mountain and things are rolling down all around you, God, if you're in this, you better be, because I'm going to get smashed, right? And then he says God sent a fire. And so God sends a great powerful wind, an earthquake, a fire, and then a gentle whisper. I'm going to connect you with one psalm that I believe is a beautiful picture of what that looks like when David wrote Psalm 18. He said, in my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to him for help. Do you think that's an accurate, 18 verse 6. So do you think that's an accurate representation of what Elijah might have been feeling?
Yes.
In desperation, I cry for help. Then he says, from his holy temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him. Do you see how that could connect with Elijah's story? I'm not saying that they were meant to connect. I'm just showing you the same typology here. Okay? And then it tells us the foundations of the mountain shook. What would you call that? An earthquake, right? They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. All right? Smoke is made by?
Fire.
Well, yeah, but smoke from his nostrils is air first, right? Because then the next part is, and a consuming fire came before him. And so when we see this type in 1 Kings, this is actually what God will often do with nature to prepare for his coming. Because it's right after that where it says he parted the heavens and came down. So when Elijah was experiencing these things, I would make the argument that he was experiencing them as a precursor to what God was showing up. Okay? It's like those Godzilla movies. When Godzilla's walking across the city, they're feeling it like 10 roads down, right? Precursor that he's on his way. He's coming. So, yeah.
So that can also correlate with Sunday. We're talking about praise because Lucifer back then was the forerunner of the praise and worship. That can be the earth praising God before he begins to.
Absolutely, I can see the earth speaking forth his majesty. That's really good. Yeah.
There's other psalms that talks about the mountain skipping like calves in his presence, and fire going before him and behind him, consuming his enemies.
Yeah. Wow. So all of that picture, that typology for us is something to help us realize God was present. But all of the acts of God do not equal the presence of God. And it's a hard thing to remind us of when we're in desperate need of God to do something for us. And I don't mean some flippant thing. I mean something serious that we really need him to act or we're in trouble. And it's easy to want to see what he does and neglect who he is. Something I was talking to one of my I forget who I was talking to today. Anyway, somebody from church. I was talking, had a long day. Good day, long day. And we were talking. I said, my biggest concern is that God seems to be providing financially for us, providing ministries. People are stepping in. My goodness, you see my announcements? I have to cut out half the announcements every week because you would be sitting there as long as my sermon. It's wonderful. God's calling all these things forth. What we don't want to do is get complacent in our pursuit of him.
Amen.
Because he's blessing us with things that are helping us. That is vital. Because we always want to be a church that is the pursuit of him. And then he can decide and discern what's best to give to us as a church and as individuals. And yeah, I think you were going to say something, Terry.
No.
I saw your hand fly up, so I was waiting for something good. Come on now. All right. And so here we have Elijah. A powerful wind is gone, tearing the mountains apart, shattering the rocks. The Lord wasn't in it. The earthquake, he's not in it. A fire falls. I mean, the last time Elijah saw fire was when? Priest of Baal, right?
Yeah.
Was God in the fire? Yes, he was in that fire, right? But he's not in this fire, which tells us God doesn't have to behave the same way every time.
That's right.
Right? Because I often pray for revival to look like the kind of revival I read about in my books. The First Great Awakening, the Welsh Revival. I expect it to look like that. And for most of my mission, I pray that it would look like that. I think it would be kind of boring of God to make revival look the same all the time, don't you? We're in a different world today. And so we pray for his presence, and he can manifest it however he wants to manifest it, right?
I've forgotten his name, but there was a Dutch African man, Andrew Murray. They said he prayed 20 years for revival and 2 years trying to stop it when it started.
Isn't that the truth? That they pray for it, and then God moves a certain way, and people are not comfortable with it, and so it must not be of him. Because he only works in our... I mean, God's an Anglican, so no, I'm just kidding. Joking, online, joking completely. No. So our church would be doing better. Not the Anglican church as a whole. It would be doing better. Not our church per se, but it would be doing better. I'm just gonna. You gotta save me when I go down that road. I'm going the wrong direction. So, all right, but then that's what's neat. Is it says after the fire came the gentle whisper. God had promised to speak to him, not how he would speak to him. And now God all of a sudden is speaking to him. He says, when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So he said, I know this is the voice of God. I want to listen. And it says the still small voice, but actually the full translation is in the stillness, the voice came. So the other's not terribly off, but it's the concept that there was all of a sudden silence. the racket, the noise, the crumbling rocks everywhere, boom, got quiet. And in that quiet, then all of a sudden God spoke. It's one of the reasons why Val's been helpful for me the last few weeks, why we added the 7 chimes to the beginning of the service. I have a stand and we don't just jump into the worship. We take that solemn 7 ring and then we enter in to prepare our hearts. And so, all right. Any thoughts on that before I continue? Because that's some deep stuff.
I can read this in a more theatrical sense, and it just makes it that much more meaningful to me that God is asking him this question. What are you doing here? You know?
Like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be off doing this?
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Has anyone ever been at a large facility or restaurant and there's just commotion and chaos and conversation and everything is loud and boisterous, and then all of a sudden you notice, did it just get quiet all of a sudden? And
Yeah.
you have to sit back and what is going on? And that's what comes to my mind when all of a sudden, after the storm and the wind and the fire and the earthquake and everything just got quiet.
Yeah.
And you hear God's voice in the gentle breeze. When all of the chaos and the noise around you stops. And then you can even hear your own thoughts start to quiet down so that you can actually hear God.
Yeah.
I know that when I'm stressed and I have anxiety building, there are so many thoughts in my mind that I can't quiet my mind enough to hear what God is saying, which I like the bells at the 7 rings on Sunday morning because it helps my mind to get quiet so that I can prepare my heart for what God has, so the noise that's all around me just stops and settles so that I can hear what God has for me.
Yep, absolutely.
Is that going to be like a permanent? Because that really does focus on.
For the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I never like to say something's permanent, but for the foreseeable future, it's doing what I had hoped it would do, and so we want to build it into what we're doing. So,
It's to us, it's a lesson that God speaks quiet. You know, I mean, this is right out, an out and out lesson for us that he's not always going to just have a huge voice to any one of us, but that he may talk quietly, and it's up to us to listen.
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I do a 2x4 get side head every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
I get that too.
Absolutely.
They're still quiet is when I
Now,
can hear.
what you know of God's character, now don't look ahead, some of you may, and that's fine, but don't look now. What you know, caught you. But what you know of God's character, and you're the youth. What you know of God's character, what do you think? Think where Elijah's at emotionally, mentally, and what he's been through, his exhaustion. What do you think of knowing God's character he's going to say, or what's the attitude he's going to bring to minister to Elijah at this point?
He's going to use the virtues: gentleness, patience,
Love.
The only way to get closer to God is to get in with Him with the virtues.
So the idea is the still small voice draws him in to those virtues.
He's going to meet him where he is.
Actually, when we have them, Christ can enter our heart. I believe is how that goes. We can hold
I
that
agree with you.
door
I think
shut.
I just said it wrong, but yeah.
We can hold that door shut and not allow the virtues. Once we accept the virtues, then we've accepted that gentle voice, that gentle breeze.
Yeah.
Right, that's
Then it can expand, I guess.
That's good. By being open to it. Shelley and then Anna.
I think in my mind, I would think that the Lord would be approaching Elijah as a parent would to a child that has just completely made a huge mistake, but they're so sorry, and the Lord's reaction would be, "That's okay, baby. Come on, that's okay." You know, and
God's never called me baby.
comfort-
But you're in your own relationship with him, and that's fine. And
as a
so,
parent, you don't want that your child to live in that disappointment and live in that place of sorrow or live in that place of
so trying to bring them out of that
yeah,
place.
so just kind of just reassure him it's okay.
Yeah.
You're still my son. I still love you. You know.
And I guess
But you
he
still
never-
feel
Then
you
Anna
still
then-
feel defiant and powerful when you're angry and mad. And I think that was where Elijah was at.
Yeah.
And God says, well, let me show you what real power is. Bam, 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 here I come.
And that kind of shut it
And then
down.
He
Yeah.
says, okay.
Plus, if we're all honest, when we let it rip, however we let our emotions and frustrations out, afterwards there's kind of that calming. I'm not saying it's holy or anything. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. But in our emotions, we're just like, and you kind of pull it in. So
Hopefully.
I was going to say something similar. I was going to say that when he allows him to see the storm, and he's kind of using the same thing that the bells do, like focus in on me. Here's my strength, and then,
that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
then when he's focused, then he speaks in him.
That's very interesting. So those things were not just meant to be kind of fanfare; they were meant to kind of settle him and bring him in. Anybody else?
I kind of see Elijah as an athlete. He's a track star. He's running. He's like a jock, you know. And then he's like doing yoga. He's like doing all kinds of stuff.
Elijah was a jock.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
He ran the horse.
He did some amazing things.
And he was a bragger, you know. But he had to be coached. So I would see God as a coach. And God would be that coach that's like, okay, you were in the game, now you're out the game, now you're looking like you're in the crowd, now I need you to get back in the game. You know, so kind of like prophetically coaching, kind of like Wemby. He's kind of like Wemby. Wemby came in with the throat. It's like, I'm coming in, I'm ready. So
you're just trying to win favor with the senior pastor from Spurs. Yeah. But no, that's good. I always view my ministry, I always saw myself more as a coach, especially doing youth ministry. And I know you do too at times. So you're there.
Thinking of God's character, would he have been wrong or out of place to have said, Elijah, after everything I have shown you, after everything I have done through you, after everything I have done to sustain you, how dare you doubt me now?
I think that's valid and fair of God, but from Elijah's perspective, God didn't do all he said he would do. That's because Elijah made up things that he thought God would do. But you're right.
But what does it say of God's character? That he didn't say,
that's true.
I'm going to find someone else.
That's right. You're right. You're right. That he still came back. Even though Elijah said, I forsake being a prophet, God's like, not so fast. I'm not done with you.
I got more assignments.
So exactly. So now, let me read to you. Now, you're Elijah in that situation. That's what you were thinking the character of God would be like, all right? Because then a voice said to him, what are you doing here? Wait a minute. That doesn't sound very compassionate, does it? Right? Use the illustration Shelley used of the kid misbehaving. They come to you. What do you want? What are you doing here? You don't expect that, right? I almost feel like the writer forgot to put a few verses in there or something like that. He says, he replied, and Elijah has nothing to say but the same thing he has been saying. And I just want to show, God can handle our complaining. And I don't mean that in some kind of silly preacher way, but he understands the brokenness of our humanity. And sometimes, and we're complaining and whining to God. I'm not saying that that's a good thing to do, but he's the Lord. And he can see what is causing that and help us work through it to get to where we need to go. He's not just going to say, go away, you little whining kid, or something like that.
What's the line? What's the line that we don't cross?
The line I always felt personally, and Larry, I'm curious what you think, because I've talked this a couple times, is for me the line is, do not question the character of God. You can question the ways, what he's doing. You don't have to understand it. At least that's how I've always felt. Does that resonate with you? Or
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I think so many times, well, I'm believing God for, it's something I made up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, I'm going to hold you to this, God, but God didn't tell me that.
If I had $1 for every fleece I laid out because of that Gideon story.
To doubt his love, to doubt his compassion, to doubt his power, those are the things that get us in trouble.
In my life, God likes to make the fleece half and half of each, then I don't even know what he's talking about anyway. And I'm not kidding. I'm like, well, that doesn't help at all, Lord. So anyway, let's continue on. So Elijah feels the need to respond to God, since God said, what are you doing here, Elijah? Notice God ignores every question Elijah just asked, right? You caught that? He said, so let's get to the root of the matter. Why are you here? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars. They put your prophets to death with the sword, and I am the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me. Does he say anything incorrect?
No.
He was the only one.
Bam, that's the one thing he'll get wrong that we'll see. Because when we are being beaten down by a situation, we'll feel like we're the only ones dealing with that. And then we get on social media and everybody's talking about their kids doing this or this happening or this vacation I took. There was a time when I was struggling so much just to provide for my family, and I'd read about these people, oh, we just went on vacation to Tahiti. I'd be like, yeah, what's the waste of money? And it created this anger inside of me, which clearly is not godly. I'm not promoting that as something we should have, but it's stuff that comes out. Isn't it?
Yep.
And so here he is saying, God, I'm the only one left, and this is the situation I'm in. What do you expect me to do with this? And I love it because the Lord doesn't really take his argument. He's kind of like, okay, well, and he goes on to the next thing. And if you notice, the next thing he says, go back the way you came. Did you catch that? In other words, you came here. I didn't tell you to come here, but I'm going to fix you up. And I'm going to send you back where I wanted to send you in the first place. Which means that we can fail at times and God can still use us for what he wanted us to do. Amen? I don't think that's reading too much into the text. I think it's right there. Yes, James?
So you're basically saying God's response to Elijah is like, and?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, we got stuff to do. Let's go.
Yep.
Yep.
Can I add on
Please.
that? And the word of the Lord came again.
There it came again. And so he speaks to it. And again, he's talking to God right now. This isn't like talking to like Gehazi, his servant, or something like that. If you remember, he left his servant behind because he said, I'm done with the ministry.
One more thing about this.
Please.
So Blessing just turned 2 like the other day now. She officially knows how to lock and unlock every door in the house.
Woo!
Genius.
So we today I have to go buy another padlock at the top now. She opens the door for everybody now, and she locks it. For
That's the worst part. You lock in.
And so I no longer have my own access to my own room, right? So the same thing, I'm giving a visual because we have access to God like that. If you know as a child, you have, like the older kids, when they're so smart, they know better than to come into the room unannounced.
Yeah.
But we have the childlike spirit that we can come to God boldly. And so when you say the lines, I would say more, to me, the lines will go based on the level of intimacy and the level that you've grown to understand, the understanding of God to know what line. So your line may not be my line, and my line may not be your line, because God sees us as children.
Yeah.
And so just that access.
That's really
you know,
good.
so when Elijah speaking to God, he's speaking based on his level of access.
That's good. And you know, as he was speaking, it just reminded me, in our Christian culture, we tend to put value when you're producing something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if all of a sudden 100 more people start coming to our church for the next year, people are going to come to me like, how'd you grow the church? Man, Larry, how'd you guys do that? And, you know, as if somehow we did it.
Right.
If I could have done it, I wouldn't have waited 8.5 years. You know, I mean, but I'm serious that we tend to put all this value on what we produce when God puts the value on being in his presence. But that's so hard because it's not as tangible as what we produce.
But that's worldly.
What's that?
That's worldly.
It's a worldly perspective. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what we produce. You know, I'm glad that we're all here growing together. That's a good thing that we're producing in each other. But we can't. But if only 4 of you show up next week, I can't say that must be because I'm a bad teacher now, right? Because it's not about what I produce or what you produce. And so, let's move on because I want to make sure we at least try to get through this chapter. The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came." I just love that. And go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, he's going to be asked to do 3 different things. You're going to anoint Hazael, king of Aram. Now, we read that and we think, okay, like it doesn't mean anything, right? Aram, was that part of Israel? No,
It's Persian.
that's Persian. Was it Persian at the time? It could have been.
Mine says Syria.
Might have been Syrian, and then you eventually got it. But
Yeah.
let's just leave it as non-Israel.
Yeah.
All right, can we agree on that part? Okay.
Yeah.
So my geography isn't always that great. But in other words, we're seeing that God is the one who controls other nations that are not even his.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Notice that.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Because he goes and he's going to anoint a king that's not a king at the time. So that,
How many times has he controlled other nations to punish Israel?
Say that again. How many times? What?
Has he controlled other nations to punish Israel?
Exactly. That's a good point. He raised up Nebuchadnezzar. That's the whole book of Habakkuk. You know, Habakkuk's crying. What are you doing? And he's like, that's my plan. That's true. And so he raises up and he dethrones kings.
Yep.
Right? Nebuchadnezzar he raised up. Then Nebuchadnezzar thought he was greater than God. And so God said, oh yeah, turn into a beast of the forest. Right? Nebuchadnezzar repents. And God doesn't restore him to the kingdom, but restores his sanity back to him. And so the first thing we see is that God controls not just his nation at this point, right? And that makes a lot more sense as New Testament Christians, because we're a chosen people, a holy nation, of people belonging to God across the earth. But at this time, that was radical, because they believed each nation had their gods and their deities that they worshiped. So God, first of all, sends him to anoint Hazael king of Aram. And that just seemed odd, but he did it. Also, he sent him to anoint Jehu, son, I almost named my dog Jehu, because Jehu's such an awesome person. But also anointed Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. So the second thing he does is he then prepares. Now, who's king over Israel right now? Ahab, and who's his queen? So he's telling Elijah, oh, I got a plan.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It wasn't Elijah's plan. Elijah thought the plan would be that Ahab and Jezebel, or at least Ahab, might come to repent and come to a place of what we would call salvation, or coming into the connection with Yahweh. And God said, that's not going to happen. We're going to knock them out. And when you get to the point of how he knocked them out, it's pretty awesome. But one of my favorite scriptures. But anyway, it's pretty graphic, but made for a good rated R movie. Some violence. But anyway, so first of all, he anoints a king from another nation. Then he anoints Jehu, who's going to take over for Ahab and Jezebel. You can't tell me that didn't feel good.
Right.
When God said that. Oh, really, God? Now it's starting to, now your plan's making sense. All right, good. And then finally, Elijah had wished to be released from being a prophet. God said it's not your time. But he will be sent to anoint Elisha, again, because God likes to mess with preachers. Elijah, Elisha. How many times have you mixed those up when you're trying to preach? It's brutal. So, but anyway, anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel, anyway, to succeed you as prophet. And so he still honored Elijah's desire, but not until he was ready to honor Elijah's desire.
He gives him a name and a future again.
Yes.
Because when you're depressed in the dark and in a hole,
yes.
that's the only way out.
He could have just left him there.
Yeah.
Said, fine. Just like he did with King Saul. The Spirit left Saul, went to David.
Yeah.
And Samuel went over and anointed David. That's not what God does here. God says, no, I want you to still play this final role in my ministry that I have for you.
To pass the torch.
Yes.
To another prophet.
And so this all is great news for Elijah. This is what he had wanted all along. He just had to wait on God's timing to make it manifest. And so Jehu will put to death any who escaped the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will put to death any who escaped the sword of Jehu, and I will reserve... Notice the last thing he throws in there real quick. What was the one complaint? And Larry said it. What was the one complaint that wasn't accurate?
I'm the only prophet.
I'm the only prophet. So God just wants to kind of throw in a proviso at the end and say, yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel of whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him. And I'm not trying to be all preachery, but I absolutely believe there is a remnant, not just in America, but across the earth, that is waiting for that moment that God is meant to bring something forth again. You read about the first great week, second, almost every revival you read about in history, it was dark days before God came and transformed it. Because that created hunger in the people, to hunger for him, and not the plastic stuff of Christianity all around us. So, all right. Whew. Take a breath. Any thoughts before we finish? I am going to finish the chapter. It'll only take me 2 or 3 minutes to finish it up. James.
There's a lot happening here.
There's a lot going on, isn't there?
I mean, all of a sudden, boom.
Exactly. And that's how God works sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Just waiting and waiting, and boom! And it just happens, right? It happened with it here. I was waiting and waiting for you guys to call me to come here, and then I hadn't heard from you for about 3 months, and I thought you were saying, not good enough, Matt. Then the next thing, Mark Winter calls me and says, when can you come? For an interview? No, we want to hire you. And there it was. And a month later, we were here. Anyway.
Same situation.
Thanks be to God.
You took I think me and you was going back for 3 months.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And then, boom, it just happened.
Come to church one Sunday.
Yep, one chance. So, Larry, were you going to throw something in? I thought, No, James's hand was up. I'm sorry, James.
Well, you just said that when there was before the revival, God's revival, it's always dark and everything. Then God reveals Himself. Well, the vision I just came as on the verses before talks about having earthquakes and fires and all that. So that could be the dark times, and all of a sudden God comes and
Yeah.
then, you know.
And breathes the life, comes into the situation and lifts us out of it. Yep. All right. So I'm just going to work quickly through this last part because it sets us up for next week. And so Elijah, the first thing he does, he went and he found Elisha. See, he didn't do it in the order God said. He just did his thing, you know. But still, he went and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, which implies that he had wealth, right? You weren't plowing with 12 yoke of oxen if you were barely scraping by.
Doesn't say that they knew each other from that day.
No, it does not say that they knew each other, that we know of. And he himself was driving the 12th pair, meaning that most likely this was all of his property, and more likely he was older. I'm not saying he was old, but he was older, meaning that this wasn't a young guy he was bringing under his wings. Imagine developing an entire career of wealth, a great name in the community, and now all of a sudden Elijah comes up and says Elijah went up to him, threw his cloak over him and around him. Elijah then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. I always read that and it seems like it was such an easy decision. And maybe it was, but doesn't that blow your mind? That he said, everything I have ever worked for my entire life, everything I have strived for and I've received and it's become, I'm just going to throw it all away to follow after Elijah. And he wasn't following Elijah as this big number 2 prophet. He was following him to be his servant. He was going to do whatever Elijah said. Wait on him, feed him, do whatever he asked him to do.
I was going to say that shows his relationship with God.
Yes, exactly that. God had been preparing something deep within him for that moment that he could say yes to it. Isn't that neat? Anyone want to add anything else?
With the when you asked him, did he know him? Just that old school. I don't know if they call it the grapevine. I don't know if y'all ever heard the term. You hear it through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If I can be back there, I know he heard of Elijah. Come on, you can't tell me that you didn't hear this man called down fire. So you know, like the news had to be breaking news about that, and so.
And you know, the verse might have been true that Elisha may have been wealthy enough that when God said, "Go get Elisha," he knew exactly who he was talking about too.
And also prophetically, Jesus said in the Old New Testament, you know, if you're not fit for the plow, you know.
You read that
so,
off.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. Quote it. Yeah, that's right.
You're not worthy.
You're not worthy if you're not fit for the plow. Yeah, absolutely. And so
it specifically mentions that he is.
he's fit for the plow.
I am so not worthy.
So, all right. And he says, "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye." And then he said, "I'll come back to you." Now, what's interesting is, in the Bible, remember Jesus said, "Follow me," and he said, "I want to go back to my father and mother." And what did Jesus say?
No.
But here, it's okay. Because I don't know what your translation has. I think it's a little rough in the NIV. He says, "Go back. What have I done to you?" And
what have I done to
It's
thee?
more like, as I've understood it, it's more like, hey, do what you need to do. Let's get going. You know, go ahead.
Hey, I'm looking at the New Living, and it says, "First let me go kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will go with you."
Yeah.
Elijah replied, "Go on back, but think about what I've done to you."
Okay. I think that captures it better than the NIV might in that
With the
case.
cloak?
Yeah. In other words, this is meant to be a done deal. You've embraced it, right? And so if you need to do that, get yourself ready, but let's go. And it's time.
Basically count the cost. Like when you do this, count the cost, because I know you have you know, like we're about to go on the exposition, you know.
Yeah, because we're going to see let's just finish up, see what he does. And so Elisha left him, went back, he took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them, representing turning away. I'm sacrificing it all. I can't go back. They're gone. But he showed his, what?
It's a severing.
It's a severing, but in the process, he also shows love for the people. Because he didn't just incinerate it, right? No, he showed his heart, didn't he? He said he burned the plowing equipment, cooked the meat, and gave it to the people, and they ate. In other words, he was obviously an incredibly generous person. Of course, with Elijah standing there, you might feel compelled too. But you know, but
He's
then
looking at you.
what's that?
He's looking at you.
He's looking. He's kind of watching what's going on. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his attendant. He left everything he had to follow Jesus.
Mine says he ministered to Elisha.
Yeah,
Same
mine
thing.
too.
It's the same concept. That
Yeah.
he was there to serve Elijah. Minister fits in fine too. That's good. Let me ask you real quick before we finish. Who are some other people in the Bible that God was marinating stuff in them and then called them?
Say that again.
Esther was one, right? Where God was working in them, marinating something in them, like growing him close to them, preparing them for the moment. Esther's one,
Joseph?
right?
David.
Joseph? Samuel.
Joseph?
Samuel.
I hadn't thought of Joseph. Joseph's a good one. Samuel, right? When he was a
Jonah
little
count?
boy. What's that?
Does Jonah count?
Maybe the opposite way.
Yeah, slap him in
He
the
was
face.
marinating in the belly, all right.
This dude.
Yes.
Does Job count?
I think Job would certainly, because God certainly did a work in Job, that kind of thing. It wasn't especially called out, but that work. Yeah, Sean. Moses, definitely, right? Put him on the backside of the desert, right? Go marinate there for a while, right? We're going to wait. I mean, you think Peter? You think the various disciples? Poor Matthew's just working his tax collector booth, you know, day in, day out, hanging out with his friends. Boom, follow me.
You know, they're fishing. Leave their nets. Follow Jesus.
Leave the nets, right? And so all of these people, and so the principle I just want to finish up with this evening, be the person that God can draw into his presence and marinate in you. By that I mean, let him put more of himself, more of your awareness of him in you. And in the process, it'll push the stuff that's not of him out of you. Because light and dark can't exist in the same place. And so if I struggle with lying all the time, if God's presence is coming, I'm going to have to make a decision. Do I want more of him, or do I want to keep lying and manipulating people, right? Light and dark, I can't have both ways, right? So allow the Holy Spirit to continue to work in our lives, speak to us, direct us, guide us, purge us, so that we can be a temple prepared for more and more of his presence to work in us and through us. And I love that Elijah was older, Elisha was older. All these people were older, right? I don't see barely any teenagers, or a couple. John might have been a teenager, but for the most part, it was us old people, right?
Woohoo!
Which means that at no point, I always loved E.M. Bounds, a great writer on prayer. He said it takes God 20 to 40 years to develop a man of God or a woman of God. I thought, well, I still got a few more years. No, actually, I got about 2 more years on that 40, and then that's how long I've been saved. But anyway, so he is not finished with you because you're still breathing. He's not finished with me because I'm still breathing. Our job is to be prepared when he says go to whatever it is he might ask us to do and go. Amen? Amen. Thank you, everybody.